Grand Theft Auto 5 is bursting at the seams with character and characters with character. Sometimes they exist as eloquent satire, sometimes as ham-fisted cynicism, but most of GTA 5's characters are caricatures of people in the early 2010s. Most of them are unrealistic assholes, to be fair, but it's the reasons for which they are unrealistic assholes that I find so thoroughly enjoyable. As such, I felt it'd be fun to list out my top 10 characters in Grand Theft Auto 5. Keep in mind, these are characters I like as characters, not as people.
I'm sick, Doc. I'm a sick, hypocritical fuck.
I agree, which is why you should really bulk buy a batch of sessions.
As far as assholes go, this dude is the most personally irritating. Isiah Friedlander is Michael's therapist, whom Michael can visit once an in-game week. We'll get to Michael later, but the dude absolutely has some problems. He legitimately needs help. The part that drives me nuts is that he wants help, and Friedlander has this amazing opportunity to help this man, and is completely ambivalent towards his issues. Every time Michael walks in the door, Friedlander sees a comically oversized bag of money with legs and rage issues, rather than an opportunity to better someone's life. It's for this reason that Friedlander seems to drive the cynical tone of Michael's storyline. For every advancement in the plot, Friedlander is there with the pretense of offering assistance, but the intent of making easy money. Almost every session, each of which is laughably short, consists of Friedlander asking Michael what's been happening, calling him some variety of sociopathic, if not outright, and reinforcing just how much help he needs and how crucial the therapy is. The therapy that consists of judgment veiled as clinical diagnosis. Oh, and after every session, dude raises his prices. Every session. That is, until the final visit, when he attempts to escape Los Santos to host a TV show. Keyword being attempts.
I'm just so fucking upset that we can't even see each other. And you're just a drunk, lame dad.
You know what? That might just be the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
So will you buy me a car?
What?
Let me be completely straightforward with y'all right now. Do not be like Jimmy DeSanta. Just don't do it, cause this kid is freaking terrible. Michael's son Jimmy is the poster child of entitlement, designed in every way to demonstrate what happens when privilege runs amok in a world that's totally cool with it. There's not a damn thing subtle about it either. If the stuff Jimmy said came out of someone's mouth in the real world, I'd be absolutely flabbergasted. His entire character is blunt, like a sledgehammer being swung wildly through a construction yard's worth of social issues. He can be heard yelling some pretty awful things while playing Righteous Slaughter 7 in his room, he calls himself Jizzle when talking to Franklin, and every time Michael rescues him from something he's done, he blames it on Michael. Or rather, he blames it on Michael, then he says, well, no, not entirely. Oh, wait, no, actually it is your fault, but also me a little bit. Whenever Michael's family problems need to be on display, Jimmy is there, along with his sister, to forge a shaky bridge between hatred and love by way of acknowledging that both him and his dad are terrible people, almost entirely without reprehension.
You know, that's why the world is the way it is today, when a paid thug gets all namby-pamby when someone asks him to act like a paid thug, and for a good cause.
Lester is a very functional character, like Deus Ex Machina incarnate, but he's also one of the more fully developed characters in the game. Lester Crest is one of Michael and Trevor's compatriots from the old days of taking scores. He's the tech guy. I mean, just look at all this technology. And he plays video games and has a nasally voice and okay, we get it, he's the nerd who uses his powers for evil. His persona appears paper thin at first. He's petty and self-indulgent, and that portrayal of geeks is unfortunate, but over time he's given enough depth for you to understand why. Lester suffers from a wasting disease and is relegated to using a wheelchair or cane to get around. His health issues combine with his worldviews to form a particularly blurred sense of justice. Obviously, he participates in the heist, so he's not exactly a hero, but he's aware of who the bad guys are and how the actions of his associates affect them. He's in tune with how things work in the corporate and political world, but is frustrated with his inability to directly influence change there. His social awkwardness and spite offer a pretty grim interpretation of what happens when you get the short end of the DNA strand. While his character frustrates me, I do appreciate how thoroughly realized he is as someone who feels the world owes him, and couldn't care less that he's fucking people over to get what he feels he deserves.
So listen, babe, if you want to make it in Vinewood, you gotta do whatever it takes. Even if whatever it takes is a depressed borderline alcoholic who hosts the third most popular talent show amongst the 40-year-old female demographic.
So, you'll let me on the show if I blow you?
Yes, and if you could wear some black lipstick, the little guy loves the goth vibe.
He's one of the oldest, longest-running Grand Theft Auto characters, and oh boy is he fucked up in GTA 5. Lazlow Jones is a hurricane of pitiful puerility punctuated by pathetic pursuits of fame, ending only in shame. Fittingly, he now hosts a low-budget show called Fame or Shame, and co-hosts Chatterbox on WCTR. For those who haven't played the old games, Lazlow Jones has hosted many a radio show in the previous GTA games, and was often a direct voice of criticism and commentary. He'd point out just how absurd his various eccentric interviewees were, and condemn the circumstances surrounding political and social issues as they were portrayed in the game. But in GTA 5, he's a has-been, desperately clinging to any semblance of popularity he can muster. He laments that his co-host on Chatterbox is younger and yet more successful than him, while at the same time recounting the numerous reasons for his descent into irrelevance. While I appreciated him as the voice of reason, GTA 5 is a far more cynical and unfortunate world, and his role as a two-faced scumbag clamoring over anyone he can to return to the top makes for good comedy. At first you might feel bad, but as the game goes on, you see just how shitty he really is, and I find myself just basking in the schadenfreude.
No, I don't want to sleep with you, and no, I don't care that I'm 39 and single. It doesn't worry me a bit.
Easy.
I'm not stressed out at all. Now go fuck yourself.
For all her rage and outlandish behavior, Mary Ann is freaking hilarious, albeit a bit dangerous if you're not privy to her commentary. Mary Ann is an outrageously over-the-top interpretation of hyper-feminism that itemizes and reflects the assumptions people make of feminist women. She exudes both superiority and self-hate, appears to hate men and assumes that they all want to sleep with her, and in general exhibits unsolicited hostility. Mary Ann is in incredible shape, and all of her missions consist of running, swimming, biking, or some combination thereof. Upon approaching her, she assumes both Franklin and Michael are sexually interested in her, makes it clear that there's no chance in hell, and then heckles them into racing her. After finishing the race with Franklin, he'll say it's not about winning, but competing, and she'll angrily state that it's always about winning and call herself a fat, unwed, career-driven loser. When you meet her as Trevor, she'll be arguing with her boyfriend to the point of berating him. Trevor will run in and punch him in the face, then declare his love for her. She immediately pegs him for being irrationally angry, not making any sense, and having zero emotional control. All qualities which she clearly exhibits. I love this interaction because it points out just how completely fucking ridiculous someone like her would be. Because you see it in Trevor. If at any point you think, oh, Mary Ann is being a typical feminist woman, certainly the writers wanted you to think that, and they then turn the portrayal around and nope, she's almost as impossibly fucked up as Trevor is. Real people just aren't like this, no matter how passionate.
So you giving me a lecture about not being a good enough gangbanger? Gangs is positive. That's all we got, my nigga. That's our heritage.
Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto San Andreas might share a region, but their most direct ties to each other's story are because of this man right here, Lamar Davis. GTA San Andreas started off as a look into the sensationalized gangster life, but by the end of the game had completely gone off the rails. GTA 5 goes off the rails about 6 missions in, but isn't without its own take on life in the hood. Lamar Davis is Franklin's childhood friend, and Lamar takes almost every opportunity he can to remind him of that. The majority of his missions consist of some misguided attempt to make money, usually involving the Ballers and Franklin's reluctant participation. As the story progresses, Lamar criticizes Franklin more and more for leaving their lifestyle behind, and more so for leaving him behind. Sure, their relationship can be as toxic as many of the others in the game, but it's one of the few that I truly believe. Lamar is thoroughly convinced that the life he leads is the only one he'll ever know, but running through it all with Franklin there too made things easier, so when Franklin starts to move on, he's forced to reconcile the bullshit he puts himself through. Lamar is crazy, he's lazy, and his intentions are a little hazy, but he's an embodiment of the trust, love, and faith that friends and family have for each other, and that's pretty cool.
You are my boy now, amigo. My career depends on this, and that's very important to me. So seeing as we're all boys now, that makes it important to you.
One of my absolute favorite pieces of writing in this game is the grand irony that is Steve Haines. From the very beginning of the game, Michael is painted as a violent sociopath, and many characters either call him one or suggest that he is one. He's accused of using his friends to save himself, selling them out and abandoning them, all to preserve his way of life. That person, in actuality, is Steve. After what went down in North Yankton and Michael struck a deal with Dave, Michael's been in witness protection down in Los Santos. It's the setup for the whole game. Steve is in control of Dave, and Dave is in control of Michael, so naturally everyone hates Steve. But it doesn't help that he's an incorrigible douchebag. Steve and Dave openly admit to being corrupt FIB agents, although they insist that the IAA is the more evil brand of corrupted. But the reasons for their actions are irrelevant because Michael's forced to comply regardless. Any justification is to serve Steve's inflated ego. An opportunist and a truly violent sociopath, Steve makes at least one attempt to sell out everyone around him once they've outlived their usefulness. Steve straight up shoots the equally corrupt Sanchez in the face after attempting to turn him over to the IAA. That is why I love Steve as a villain. He's not omnipotent, he's not invulnerable, he's an asshole who had a ton of power and underestimated the people that he fucked over.
No, that's not how we work.
Well, you'll forgive me, but that's how we're gonna work this time, all right? We're doing it my way, because as I recall the last time when we did it your way, we all got shot at, you got buried, resurrected, turned into a twat, and Brad ended up in a fucking prison!
Yeah, and Lester told us not to do that job, but we did it anyway.
And Lester seems pretty good, man.
It's impossible to talk about the final three characters all on their own. I mean, I've already referenced them several times throughout the list. So here's number 3, number 2, and number 1. Trevor, Michael, and Franklin are three deeply troubled people, tied together in some twisted amalgam of friendship and circumstance.
Why am I paying you all this money if not to be honest, for once?
Michael's actions are what lead to the circumstances behind the trio's relationship and the FIB plot. He's one of the more dynamic characters in the game as he gradually learns more about himself and admits more about himself in relation to the missions that they complete over the course of the story. Trevor accurately clocks Michael as being dishonest and evasive, qualities which Michael comes to terms with and begins to tackle near the end of the game. Michael's definitely angry, but his anger is so clearly stemming from denial of fault for his circumstances, it'd be impossible not to realize it. Seeing Michael from that perspective, one who does in fact run from everything meaningful, preferring to knock down the walls of his prison rather than to ask the doorkeeper how he could make amends, makes Michael such an intriguing character. Someone you can be curious about and invested in, without feeling bad for because he's put himself where he is. There's no room for pity, and he doesn't ask for it.
You know, there's more to this gig than just going crazy all the time, killing everyone in sight.
Just because I like the life and you feel guilty about it doesn't make you more of a man than me. And you know what? Deep down, I know you believe the bullshit. The picket fences, the fucking happy endings.
Therein lies the brilliance of the juxtaposition of him and Trevor. Trevor craves pity, but not validation. He wants Michael to feel remorse and to express his feelings in any way, other than anger, regarding his past and the treatment of those close to him, especially of Trevor. Trevor is indeed a man of principles, an honest man whose reasoning for doing literally anything in the story is fueled by his misguided principles. Being true to yourself is paramount as far as Trevor is concerned, even if that means murdering your way through life. A life of crime and hostility is justified if it's the way that you're meant to live. That's a fucking insane way of thinking, but that's Trevor's way of thinking. Singular, narrow-minded, focused, and emotionally driven in all aspects of life. He wants to make a good life for himself, but not at the sacrifice of his principles and the things and people he cares most about. But just about anybody and anything else is grounds to become the beef to be turned into hamburgers that he'll happily eat for the rest of his life.
Man, check this out, homie. I like blowing motherfucking fools' heads off just as much as the next psychotic asshole. But I just don't look at this shit as doing a good deed.
Well, now you can, because it's not fools' heads, it's assholes' heads.
Now, Franklin has no relation to these two men outside of the one he develops throughout the game. They're white, middle-aged dudes who made a living robbing banks far from Los Santos. They're all criminals, that's about all they have in common. Or so it seems, anyway. Franklin and Michael both feel like their pasts are haunting them, and even though they can escape, and want to escape, something behooves them to stay and clean up their mess. I initially felt that Franklin was a yes man, far too eager to do whatever people ask of him, but I realized that he cares greatly for the well-being of others. He's just incapable of turning that compassion and attention inwards. Lamar and Tanya have nothing to offer him, not a damn thing, other than friendship and a shared past. And it's for that reason that he helps them, goes along with them even at great cost to himself. Whereas Michael does what he has to do to protect his decisions in life and his family, Franklin does it because where he's going holds nothing for him. He wants to get out of the hood, but he doesn't have anywhere he wants to go. He just wants to leave, but he's attached to the people. He eventually learns to care for Michael and Trevor. He recognizes the passion both Trevor and Michael have for those close to them, for family, and he recognizes that in himself. It's blatantly described in his relationship with Tanisha, despite how little screen time their relationship gets. He keeps telling her he'll change, but he has no idea who he is. He only knows what he cares about. But isn't that just like family? To have no one identity, to be juggling several egos at once, glued together by care for each other. And as such, it would appear to me that, even though it's not about Grove Street anymore, this San Andreas story is still entirely about families. Hello everybody, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it because I enjoyed making it. And when you're done here, feel free to check out the Top 5 Video Game Rivalries video. It's a fun little breakdown of some of the more iconic video game rivalries out there. Or if you'd like, check out the video on the right, the top 15 enemies that aren't bosses in video games. It's kind of a fun look at some of the less appreciated bad guys out there. Or just watch my latest video. It's a quick breakdown and analysis of Helldivers, a top-down shooter for the PlayStation everything. Bye-bye.